Good morning, thank you everybody. My name is Jacobo. I'm a software engineer at Igalia. We are an open source consultancy company. And I'll talk you here about Sharepoint and LibreOffice interoperability through the CMIS protocol. Let me first start introducing briefly my company and the LibreOffice project, and then I will talk to you about the CMIS protocol. We will see how to write your own client using the libcmis project, and then we see from a practical point of view, from the end user point of view, how to connect to your Sharepoint server from LibreOffice, and later we will take a look at what are we preparing for the future releases of LibreOffice regarding CMIS support. So, as I said, I'm a software engineer at Igalia. We are an open source consultancy specialized in open source technologies. We have already 14 years of experience in the field, and we have contributions to all those projects. We are mainly focused on client-side web technologies. We have contribution to WebKit, Chromium, V8, JavaScript Core, but we have also hackers on multimedia, accessibility, and of course, what has brought me here on the open documents field. About the LibreOffice project, you may probably know that LibreOffice is the main open source office suite, and it's backed by the Document Foundation, which the community is a healthy mix of volunteer and corporate contributors. The foundation behind takes care that there is no single vendor driving the direction of the project. And regarding our contributions, we have 100 monthly committers and around 2,000 commits, 7 million lines of code, and a code base that dates back 20 years. It carries 20 years of history. This is an actual comment found in one of the project README files. It says that we might have some lines that date back to November of 1990. That means this is earlier than the kernel project, for example. So, let's talk about the CMIS protocol now. CMIS stands for Content Management Interoperability Services. It's an abstraction layer for interoperability across enterprise content management systems, ECMs in short, using web protocols. ECMs, as you said, are used to store and structure data in the form of documents, pictures, video, in opposition to structured data that it is stored in databases. CMIS provides an abstraction for the main operations found in most ECM servers. Provides a common data model with typed files and folders and properties, services for adding and retrieving documents, and it may provide services for access control, version control, relations, and queries. This is up to the implementation, up to the server implementation. Your servers can define a set of capabilities, and that's what clients need to know to interact with them. And the protocol defines a set of bindings with SOAP, the RPC style standard for web services, a more restful approach using AtomPub, and from the 1.1 revision of the protocol, it has been added a JSON binding too. It is not that standard yet, because most of the servers implement the 1.0 version of the CMIS protocol. And the main model tries to be, as I said before, an abstraction for the common objects and operations found in ECMs. The repository is the topmost object, and a server can have any number of repositories with a minimum of one. repositories are also expose the capabilities of the server. For example, you query the repository to know if versioning, for example, is available, or other optional parts of the protocol. You have objects, which is the abstraction of the actual contents in the ECM, and objects have types. There are two basic types of folders and documents. Those types have properties. Folders and documents provide a common, a basic set of them, basically name, modification and creation dates, etc. And more types can be added, and you can build hierarchies with that. For example, you could have an invoice type which extends the document type and adds a property like invoice number, so you can use it to query for queries, for example, later. The two basic types of folders and documents. Folders, there's always one special folder in a repository, which is the root folder, and it has no parent, and there's an operation in the repository to get its root folder, and you can start navigating through it. Folders define a hierarchy. It's basically the same concept that directories in a file system, and as I said before, they have a set of standard properties. Documents have also some standard properties, and more importantly, have a content stream with a MIME type, which you can query to get the actual contents in the document. These are some services exposed by CMIS servers. You have the repository server. You can use it to list and get properties of repositories. The repository services also expose the available types in your server, in case you have added your own types. And as I said before, you can query the repository service to know about the capabilities of your server. You have a navigation service to be able to browse the folder hierarchy. You have an object service to perform the create, update, delete operations on documents and folders. You can access objects by their object ID, which all of the objects will have, or by the path, which you can get from the navigation service. And optionally, but a very important one, is the versioning service, which will allow you to create and access different revisions of one document. Not all, only documents are versionable. For example, you can't have versionable folders with different contents through the time. It's not supported by the protocol. And among the documents, it might be that only some of them, some certain types of documents, are versionable. There is a versionable flag you can use to check for that capability. This is a short list of server implementations, but there are plenty of them nowadays. We have open source ones like Alfresco or Magnolia, and closed source ones like the IBMs or Sharepoint, which I came here to talk about. And this is a short list too of client implementations. You have open source ones like Drupal, LibreOffice, and SharePoint is here too because it also can act as a CMIS client, for example, and it can access seamlessly to contents available in a different ECM that implements the CMIS protocol. This is a typical interaction between CMIS client and a server. Your client will likely want to get the list of repositories of the server, expose them, know about their capabilities. Then once you have selected one of them, you would like to get the root folder of that repository and then navigate through the folders until you reach the document you want. then check it out, create a new private working copy and get its contents and work on it, and then you can check it in with the modifications and adding a new revision to that content in the server. So this is a briefing about the protocol. Now we will see a practical example of a client implementation using libcmis project. Well, libcmis is a C++ client library for the CMIS protocol, and it's an open source project with varied licensing options. One of the options is LGPL, so you can link it from proprietary development. I'm not encouraging you to do proprietary development, but there's you have the option there. And it's a project that has been started and maintained by the LibreOffice community, but it's been decided that to keep it separate so everyone could benefit from it. And that's the website. You can get the source and start playing with it. And what libcmis provides to developers, you have a plain C and C++ APIs with classes abstracting the CMIS entities I explained you before. You will have a specific implementation for selected servers, including Sharepoint, but it's usually transparent for the developer using libcmis. And you will have a command line client tool you can use to connect to your server, check the connection, do basic operations, and also you can take a look at the source of that client, that command line client tool, to looking for inspiration for your own development. So it's a good test case and also a good example of a client implementation. I would like to show you some code examples that correspond to the basic interaction between a client and a server that I explained you before. To get the list of repositories from the server, you will need to use the session factory object and create a session with a connection with the server. There are a lot of parameters, but it's likely that you won't need all of them. It's mostly up to the server implementation, but the basic ones are, of course, the URL and your username and password for authentication. And once you have a session, libcmis session object, you can call the get repositories method and get a vector of repository pointers, and then you can iterate through them, get their IDs and names, expose the names to the user, whatever. And once you know the repository you want to act, you will use the set repository method in the session object to open it, and now you can get the root folder with the get root folder method in the session object. Once you have that root folder, you can use it to navigate through the contents. You have the getChildren method that will return you a vector of libcmis objects. Those objects will have name and ID and also some common properties, and you can use the getBaseType method to check which type they belong. You will have a CMIS folder and CMIS document corresponding to the two basic types. And once you know that your object is a folder, you can cast the object to a libcmis folder, and then call the getChildren method again and continue browsing the contents. Once you have reached the document you want, well, it's time to check it out and do something with it. Well, The first line is an alternative way to access a CMIS object. You can access them navigating through with the get root folder, get children, etc. But you can also save their object IDs somewhere, and then get the CMIS objects back with the get object method found in the session object. And that will return you a CMIS object. You can check its type, cast it to a document object, and then you can call checkout, and that will create a private working copy in the server, so you can get the contents of that private working copy, work with them, and then check it back in again. In case you don't want to save those contents, you have the cancel checkout method that will remove that private working copy from the server. But well, you still have to get the contents from the server, and for that you can use the get content stream method in the document. That will return you a standard input stream from C++. There's an optional parameter, as you can see, it's the stream ID. Well, some CMIS servers might expose several stream IDs for one object. That's an optional part of the protocol. You can know about it querying there. When you query the repository for its capabilities, it will tell you that if it supports several stream IDs on one document. It's not a usual case, but some servers do it, and the protocol supports it. And well, once you have that C++ input stream, you can do the common operations to, for example, write it to a file and then open it. And once you have done your modifications to that content, it's time to check it into the server again, and you will need to fill some data to do it. You will have to tell the server if it's a major revision or not. You will have to add a comment telling what you have modified in the content. You might add a new set of properties. You can populate that property pointer map with CMIS properties. You will have to specify a content type and a file name. And once you have done it, you can get again your private working copy using, for example, its ID, cast it to a document object, and then use the checking method with all those parameters to save again the contents to the server. So these bits of code are extracted from the libcmis command line client tool. So, well, you will need to fill the gaps, but still you can get working a client with these bits and a bit of extra work. But if C or C++ is not your thing, you still have open source options for you to help building CMIS clients. You have the Apache chemistry on Java platforms or in .NET platforms. There are at least a couple of open source libraries for you to help you to build CMIS clients. So well, that was good for developers, but what about end users? I'm an end user on my desktop, and I want to access some documents that my organization provides me in a SharePoint server. What can I do? Well, first of all, your company must enable the CMIS modules in your SharePoint server. I know that they are independent modules that can be enabled or disabled. There's a client and a server module. As I said before, SharePoint can act as both types of as both ends of the CMIS protocol. In SharePoint 2010 it was part of a separate administration toolkit, and in 2013 version it comes with a basic package, I think. But well, I'm not going to tell you how to do it because well, I haven't maintained SharePoint servers, and there are plenty of Microsoft experts here who will know much better than me. But regarding the LibreOffice side of things, well, I must first a disclaimer: the CMIS implementation is part of the LibreOffice custom file dialogues. So first of all, you have to check if they are enabled or not, and this is done from the from LibreOffice settings screen. That setting use LibreOffice dialogues is the one you must check. Once you have enabled LibreOffice custom file dialogues, this is the file dialog you will find when you try to open a document. In this dialog, you have the Connect to Server button, and that button will take you to a dialog where you can configure the connection to the server. You can set it a name for future reference, a type. We support several types of content servers, not only through CMIS but through WebDAV, FTP, Samba, where there are several options there. If you set CMIS, you will be able to set a server type. If you set SharePoint, it will fill you with the binding URL for the SharePoint server. So you only need to fill the host here, and the rest of the URL is already written for you. And once this URL is correct, you can press this button here, and it will list the repositories exposed by your server. You can select one, optionally set a path, press OK, and then you will be able to browse the contents like any other folder in your file system through this dialog. And the server you have configured will appear here in this list as for quick access in the future. So as you can see, this implementation it works, but it has some problems, and the biggest of all of them is that the feature is not visible to average users, because it is only accessible through LibreOffice custom file dialogues, which might or might not be visible depending on the configuration, on the default configuration for dialogues in your LibreOffice distribution. And it's true that most LibreOffice providers have it disabled by default. They use the system file dialogues instead of LibreOffice own ones. So you have to go to that settings screen and manually select LibreOffice dialogues to be able to access it. That's far from ideal. It hides the feature from average users, and that has a nasty consequence, which is that less users are taking advantage of it, and less users are testing it and provide bug reports. So that leads to under average testing and maintenance of this specific feature in LibreOffice. The good news is that this is going to change really soon, because the community design team has been taking a look into this topic, and they have set a plan to improve this feature with the following set of goals. They will like to increase the visibility of the feature so more people can take advantage of it. They want to integrate it in the standard LibreOffice workflow without having to enable obscure options in the configuration. They would like to ease access to the most popular storage services. And the good news is that this plan is already set. We have the path written, we have mock-ups, and there's a person working on it as a part of a Google Summer of Code project. So we expect that the work will be ready and available for everyone in the 5.1 release, which will happen early next year. To increase the visibility of the feature, specific entry for remote content will be added to LibreOffice Start Center. So there will be a highlighted option in the Start Center together with open templates and the new the entries for new documents. We will add specific menu options or toolbar buttons to open from remote and save from remote. This will increase visibility and integrate this feature in the standard workflow of LibreOffice. There will be a specific dialog to open and save from remote locations, so you don't have to rely on having the custom file dialogs from LibreOffice enabled or not, and it will make the feature independent from this particular configuration entry. These dialogs will have a list of recently accessed services and a way to add a service and to edit the services that you might have added before, and of course a way to browse it like if they were local contents in your desktop. And to ease access to the most popular storage services, there will be dialogues to manage the different services, and the dialogues will vary depending on the service you want to configure. So they ask you for the minimum data you need to connect to that kind of server. An example is to set up a Google Drive connection. You actually don't need anything else than your Google ID, because LibreOffice already know about the service URL, and you need nothing else than that. If you want to connect to a SharePoint server through CMIS, it might ask you for the location of the server, the host name, but LibreOffice already knows about the URL of the CMIS service inside the SharePoint server, so you don't have to type it. And of course there will be generic entries for CMIS or WebDAV servers that might not be that popular, where you can fill all the data you need for the URL, login data, etc. But the point is that we will have dialogues with the minimum set of options you need to configure the access to that server. So, as a summary, we have known about the CMIS protocol. We know we can use it for interoperability with ECMs and specifically with SharePoint. We have seen how you can use libcmis to develop your own C or C++ client, and of course there are other open source options in the Java or .NET worlds. We have seen how LibreOffice can connect to CMIS servers, the steps to configure that connection, and we have taken a look into the future and what will come next year to improve this feature in LibreOffice and help everybody access their documents everywhere they are. So that's all I had to say. Thank you very much for your attention.
Are there any questions?
Hey.
Hi.
Do you have any plans to support open by content?
Sorry? Open?
Open by content. So Windows, I think, was the first one to come out with this. So Microsoft guys can confirm maybe 12, 15 years ago. There is actually an option in Windows that you can click such that the open dialog box is also a search box for the contents of the files, and Windows file shares, if you do them right, are able to support that. And that means that, for example, on a Samba share, if you have the right search index on the back end, there can be some support.
Yes, of course, if you are using LibreOffice on Windows and Windows already supports it, you will have seamless access to it. In Linux or Mac builds of LibreOffice, you can use this method to access Samba contents, but we don't have a specific support.
So there would need to be search semantics in the dialogue you're putting there, a way of communicating with the back end. Oh, well, maybe we can talk about that with the team. It seems like a good unified access point to do that.
Yeah, there's like a second phase of this plan to improve the file dialogues in LibreOffice, and the plan is that is to provide more powerful search options in them. So that might be definitely
good.
an option we could check.
I'll talk to the team.
Great, thank you.
Hi, my question is regarding the protocol. When it says a document, does it say completely the document, or only the chunk files as Office does?
That's up to the implementation, but as libcmis works, you send all the content stream to the server.
Okay.
I have a question. I see that YouTube, it supports SharePoint 2010, 2013. I didn't see Office 365. Is there any specific reason for that, or because it should be relatively easy to support, or not?
Yeah, it should be pretty easy. Actually, we might take advantage to this conference to look into the details of that option and probably add it as a quick access option in future releases of LibreOffice.
Yeah, I think it will make a lot of sense, because then you might get Microsoft aligned with your strategy, and you have the people here to talk with them.
Yeah, definitely. There are already options to access to Google Drive, Dropbox, so
Yeah,
that
I
makes
saw
a lot of sense.
Yeah. No more questions? Okay, thank you, Jacobo, very interesting.
Thank you.